I'm Maria Elena Giassi, and this is Currents. A look at the winners and losers at last night's Iowa caucuses.
Thank you, Iowa, for the great send-off you're giving to us.
Game on, and we are going to keep scoring.
We'll find out what it means going forward. Plus, how one group is praying for victims of violence.
To put our trust in them and to follow their lead to create a more peaceful world.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. It was the first vote of the 2012 campaign, and Iowa Republicans have made their voices heard. Mitt Romney, the frontrunner according to polls of likely Iowa caucus goers, came out on top, but it was a lot closer than many expected. He nudged out former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, one of two Catholics in the race, by only 8 votes. Romney and Santorum took home more than 24% of last night's vote. And Texas Governor Ron Paul came in third at 21%, and former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, the other Catholic in the race, came in fourth with only 13%. It was a disappointing showing for Gingrich, who was, as recently as a couple of weeks ago, considered the frontrunner. CNN's Greg Black has more on last night's results.
The first votes in the 2012 presidential race have been cast. In the end, 3 candidates celebrated a top-tier showing.
Thank you, Iowa, for the great send-off you're giving to us.
Game on, and we are going to keep scoring, just as we have tonight.
While the rest either looked ahead or nursed their wounds.
And with a little prayer and reflection, I'm going to decide the best path forward.
After running 5th, Governor Rick Perry announced he's heading home.
I've decided to return to Texas, assess the results of tonight's caucus, determine whether there is a path forward for myself in this race.
Newt Gingrich blamed attack ads for his 4th-place finish. Many of those ads were paid for by a political action committee that supports Mitt Romney. Gingrich says from now on, he'll be on the offensive.
We are not going to go out and run nasty ads, but I do reserve the right to tell the truth.
Michelle Bachmann finished 6th in Iowa.
And after that less than hopeful showing, Bachmann is heading home. And as we hear from CNN's Paul Steinhauer, she may not be the only one.
The Iowa caucuses have a reputation of narrowing the field in the battle for the nomination, and once again, they lived up to their reputation. Michelle Bachmann jumping out of the race for the White House, suspending her campaign, announcing that here in Des Moines the morning after those caucuses. Here's a little bit of what she said.
And so last night, the people of Iowa spoke with a very clear voice. And so I have decided to stand aside. And I believe that if we are going to repeal Obamacare, turn our country around and take back our country, we must do so united. And I believe that we must rally around the person that our country and our party and our people select to be that standard bearer.
This must be painful for Bachmann. She was born in Iowa. She spent a lot of time campaigning here, but she only got 5% of the vote in the caucuses, and now she has suspended her bid for the nomination. Another thing we're learning, Rick Perry, will he jump out of the race or stay in it? It looks like for now, he is going to go to New Hampshire and South Carolina and continue his bid for the nomination.
We have much more on the Republican candidates for the 2012 race for the White House just ahead. Are Catholics more likely to support their own on primary day? We'll find out. And we'll also talk again with National Review Online's Catherine Jean Lopez about last night's results and what lies ahead. That's next. Welcome back. Former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, one of 2 Catholics vying for the Republican nod for the White House, had a stronger than expected showing at the Iowa caucuses last night. Santorum was just 8 votes behind former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. Both men took more than 24% of the vote. And as the campaigns move on, faith may be a factor, but are Catholics more likely to vote for a member of their own church? According to a Gallup poll taken last month, the answer is no. A poll of Catholics show their support for each candidate mirrors that of the general public. When asked in December, 26% of Catholics said they supported former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, who is Catholic, while 24% said they were backing Romney. Santorum lagged far behind at only 4%. And as we found out from last night's results in Iowa, a few weeks make a big difference. Our news editor, Ed Wilkinson, talked more about that with National Review Online editor-at-large, Catherine Jean Lopez.
Catherine Jean Lopez from National Review Online. Thanks again for being with us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me back, Ed.
Well, listen, last night in Iowa, Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum were only 8 votes apart. So who's really the winner here? Is it Romney or is it Santorum?
It really was a remarkable night, and in some ways they both are the winner. You know, it was a virtual tie, obviously, and if you rewind a month or so, it wasn't until December that Mitt Romney even thought that it was worth being on the ground in Iowa in a real concentrated way. He was only expected to come in third. It was sort of a half-hearted attempt, even though compared to other people, he has the financial resources, so he had invested money in it. But his heart wasn't in Iowa, because last time around, when he ran in 2008, the expectations were high from Iowa. Then he lost Iowa, and it sort of was a spiral effect for him toward his eventual exit, obviously. So it was actually a genuine victory for Mitt Romney in that sense, even though there is this presumption that of inevitability or establishment inevitability about him. And I'm always quick to say there's nothing inevitable in politics. But then for Rick Santorum, it really is a tremendous victory, because if you rewind a month, no one was taking Rick Santorum's candidacy seriously. Obviously, I exaggerate by saying no one, but he's the guy, as we discussed yesterday, who had to literally raise his hand in one of the debates because he really wasn't getting asked much of anything.
Well, do you see the votes for Santorum as pro-Santorum, or are they anti-Romney votes?
Well, a lot of people see him as almost the last anti-Romney alternative. They had tried so many other people, and who didn't work out for one reason or another. But I actually think that that's sort of the conventional cynical view, and I'm not sure it's entirely true. It was interesting that yesterday David Brooks in the New York Times took notice to Santorum's sort of working class message. When there's a caricature of Rick Santorum that you'll hear on the Daily Show or wherever you hear Rick Santorum discussed prior to today, and that's that he's seething, talking about abortion all the time, and that's all he can talk about, and that he has these out of the mainstream views. And the fact of the matter is, and I think this is what Iowa voters who responded to him saw, is that he was able to put those issues into a broader context, talking about how family is essential to economic growth.
Sure.
And maybe the media, having started to focus on him as the last anti-Mitt guy, almost gave them the confidence to go with the guy who lost his last race for Senate so dramatically as Santorum did.
Does he become the Catholic candidate? I mean, he is the pro-life, anti-abortion candidate. Will people look to see if a Catholic vote solidifies behind him?
Well, you know, as you know so well, Ed, Catholics don't vote in a block. Now, do conservative Catholics? Not self-consciously, you know. It's not like we all gather together and ask Archbishop Dolan who we're going to vote for, and then we go vote, or do it in any other kind of organized way. I've certainly seen already this afternoon and earlier this morning emails from some lay Catholic groups who are thinking that maybe this is the time to endorse him. But I've never seen Catholics operate in that kind of organized way. I think that Catholics do what voters do, and they look at the set of issues and they look at who's most electable. And who will lead on issues that are important to them, and then for us, obviously, his signature issue in so many ways is life.
Sure.
But there are other Republicans in the field who are pro-life as well.
All right. Well, it's on to New Hampshire and then South Carolina, and hopefully we'll speak with you after those primaries.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for your insights.
Good night.
In other news from the campaign trail, a group of prominent social conservatives in Massachusetts are defending Mitt Romney's record. In a letter, the group says Romney staunchly defended traditional marriage by working to overturn a law legalizing it in Massachusetts. The group also says Romney vetoed bills that would have expanded embryonic stem cell research and access to the morning after pill. Among the signers of the letter defending Romney are former Boston Mayor Ray Flynn and Harvard Law professor Marianne Glendon, both of whom served as U.S. ambassadors to the Vatican. Stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. A California bishop steps down after shocking revelations. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Maria Elena Giassi. Coming up in just a bit, prayers for victims on the Feast of Holy Innocents. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. There's some shocking news out of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. Pope Benedict has accepted the resignation of an auxiliary bishop who revealed that he has fathered 2 children. Bishop Gabino Zavala was the senior-most auxiliary bishop for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. In a letter to Catholics there, Archbishop Jose Gomez says Zavala told him about the children, both teenagers, early last month, and said they were living with their mother in a different state. Gomez says the LA Archdiocese has offered spiritual care as well as money to help pay for the children's college costs. And a bit of happier news, meanwhile, from California. Pope Benedict named Auxiliary Bishop Cirilio Flores of the Diocese of Orange as the co-adjutor bishop for San Diego. That means Bishop Flores will automatically become San Diego's bishop once current Bishop Robert Brahm reaches 75, the mandatory retirement age for bishops, in September of 2013. Bishop Flores has served on the U.S. Bishops' Conference Subcommittee on Latin America and Latino Affairs. And a Canadian bishop who pled guilty to possessing child pornography is now a free man. Raymond Leahy was sentenced to 15 months in jail today, but was released after being credited for time served. Leahy, formerly a bishop in Nova Scotia, was arrested at an airport in Ottawa, Canada, back in 2009 after authorities discovered an image of child pornography on his computer. Closer to home, the Bishop of Manchester, New Hampshire says he hopes his state legislature will overturn a law legalizing same-sex marriage. In a message to New Hampshire's Catholics, Bishop Peter Labasi says he sincerely hopes the state legislature will vote to restore the traditional understanding of marriage. The Diocese of Manchester comprises the entire state of New Hampshire. The legislature there will reportedly consider a bill to overturn same-sex marriage and replace it with civil unions. And investigators say it may be too early to determine what caused a fire at an abortion clinic in Pensacola, Florida. But as we hear from reporter Anthony Pora, there is no doubt the fire is suspicious.
Dave Halupaski's part of a pro-life group and wanted to see it firsthand.
I've come down to take pictures, see what's happened. I was here Friday, praying in front of the clinic, and lo and behold, I got a call today that the place burned down. It's no longer in business.
Flames shot out of the building early Sunday morning. Firefighters quickly responded, but the fire still burnt through a large portion of the clinic. Investigators from the State Fire Marshal's office and the Bureau of Tobacco, Alcohol, and Firearms tried to piece together what happened. They determined the fire started under the floor, then worked its way up the building. They discovered an ankle-high pile of dried leaves and shrubs in the back that they say helped spread the fire. But they have yet to answer what many want to know, if this was an act of an arsonist. All they can say is that the fire started outside of the building and they have not been able to find an accidental cause, but many are already drawing their own conclusions.
What do you think now that you see it?
So when you see something like this, I mean, does that fireman?
Well, I mean, obviously someone doesn't like abortion. I'm against it myself, but I would never go that far.
I am pro-life. I am totally against abortion. I'm against violence. The other incidences in Pensacola in the past years, we are against that, but this is not the way to go about things.
That report from Anthony Pora. From Maryland, 2 doctors are being charged with aborting babies that could have survived outside the womb. Sources tell Reuters that officers who searched the abortion clinic found 35 fetuses in a freezer. According to investigations, a doctor illegally initiated abortions at his New Jersey clinic and then completed them in Maryland. The case will determine whether the aborted babies would have been viable outside the womb. A Utah doctor hired to work at the Maryland clinic is also being charged. And meanwhile, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has announced it is dropping a case against a woman accused of forcibly causing her own miscarriage. The woman was charged after a building superintendent found a fetus while sorting through recyclable materials outside the woman's apartment. Prosecutors offered no explanation as to why they were dropping the case. From Tajikistan, police sources say religious hatred may have fueled the murder of a man dressed like Santa Claus. According to Reuters, a crowd attacked a 24-year-old man dressed as Grandfather Frost, the Russian equivalent of Santa. The man was visiting relatives early Monday when the attack occurred. According to sources, the crowd shouted, "You infidel," as they beat and stabbed the man. And from Rome, Pope Benedict got back into the swing of things today. Rome Reports has details.
The Pope held his first general audience of the year at the Vatican's Paul VI Hall with roughly 7,000 people in attendance.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, sono lieto di accogliervi in questa prima udienza generale del nuovo anno e di tutto il cuore porgo a voi e alle vostre famiglie i miei affettuosi voti augurali.
The Pope went on to say that the sense of joy and light one feels during the season comes from the moment God became man.
Natale è il punto in cui cielo e terra si uniscono. Le varie espressioni che sentiamo in questi giorni sottolineano la grandezza di quanto è avvenuto.
And through the Eucharist, said the Pope, God once again becomes truly present in the world.
La venida di Cristo rasca las tinieblas del mundo, llena la noche santa de un resplandor celeste y difunde sobre el rostro de los hombres el esplendor de Dios Padre.
Among the thousands of people, there was a choir group from the U.S. that sang a short carol for the Pope.
And popular Catholic speaker Damon Owens has been selected as the first executive director of the Theology of the Body Institute. Owens has lectured for the Institute since 2005. He is the founder of the New Jersey Natural Family Planning Association. Owens says he is thrilled with the new opportunity. The Theology of the Body Institute works to promote Pope John Paul II's teachings on human sexuality. If you're interested in hearing Damon Owens speak in person, he'll be hosting a Theology of the Body seminar at Presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary Parish in Jamaica, Queens on January 21st. Stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. When we return, during the 12 days of Christmas, what one group is doing to remember victims of violence.
It's so easy for us to talk, to pray, to sing, and then to walk away. And have we necessarily changed anything? In some ways we could say, well, we've given it to God, but I think we need to, in some ways, change ourselves.
Finally tonight, it happens just a few days after Christmas, on December 28th. It's the Feast of Holy Innocents, celebrated to commemorate the execution of male children in the town of Bethlehem, as ordered by King Herod soon after the birth of Jesus. Herod ordered the killing so as not to lose his throne to the newborn king of the Jews. Of course, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph escaped to Egypt, but the December 28th feast commemorates those who were killed. And the Catholic Peace Organization took the feast as an opportunity to pray for victims of violence, especially young people. They gathered at St. Joseph's Church in Greenwich Village.
O God, You speak to us in so many ways. By your Holy Spirit, enable us to hear the voices of these young people, to put our trust in them, and to follow their lead to create a more peaceful world.
We had a prayer service for the Feast of the Holy Innocents. Someone in the national Pax Christi had put forth years ago as an appropriate thing for us as Pax Christi, since our focus is peace, nonviolence, to use this particular feast day as a day to remember victims of violence, especially children.
Like Joseph, Mary, and Jesus, let us side with the holy innocents of the world. Advocate for children.
The story of Holy Innocents is that Herod got word that this new baby was born who was to become the king of the Jews, and Herod became very jealous, frightened. He was basically a power monger who wanted no competition. So, not knowing who Jesus was, he ordered the death of all baby boys 2 years and under. Fortunately, Jesus was not among them because his foster father Joseph had been forewarned and had already escaped with Mary and Jesus to Egypt. But that did not save the other children that were killed.
Creator God, you have created every child in your image, and yet we don't treat every child as a precious reflection of you.
We have so many children that are victims of war and that are victims of trafficking, victims of sex slavery and labor, slavery.
Urge President Obama to stop giving military aid to countries that use child soldiers in their armies.
The action recommendations in particular are there because it's so easy for us to talk and to pray and to sing and then to walk away. And have we necessarily changed anything? Have we necessarily changed ourselves? In some ways we could say, well, we've given it to God, but I think we need to, in some ways, change ourselves. And the action suggestions hopefully will help us do that.
I felt it was important to come and add my voice to others here who were also praying.
Yes, contacting my congressperson and the state to advocate for the children in a particular act that is mentioned in the material that was given out tonight.
For various reasons, we don't get many people, but I just continue to feel like it's one of the most important and, in a sense, one of the most fundamental things to who Pax Christi is, or what Pax Christi is. Even to do what Jesus said, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in his name. So for 12 people, if it means something to them, it's worth doing.
That is all for this edition of Currents. Be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. And if you have a question, comment, or story idea, please email us. The address is dropusaline@currentsny.net. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Maria Elena Giassi. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.